Hey guys, a totally unplanned video, as you can tell by what's going on with the camera there. I'm not sure what your camera angle is going to be like. Unplanned video, just come from another funeral. So I seem to remember I made a video returning from another funeral once before. It's just that it's such a striking thing. You know, I've been to lots of funerals in Japan, I don't know how many, 10, 12, maybe more over the years, and every time there's so much stuff that's striking about it, you know. Usually in Japan, funerals are Buddhist. So Japanese people often joke that they're born Shinto and die Buddhist because when they're born, they often have Shinto ceremonies, and when they die, they usually have a Buddhist funeral. And this was that too. I've talked about funerals before. There's certain things that we have to do that are different, cultural things that are different. One is that we have to take an envelope, a special envelope, specifically for funerals, and inside that envelope we put cash in it, multiples of prime numbers, so not even numbers. So because we want to avoid shi, which means death. So you know, usually it's 30,000 yen or 50,000 yen or 70,000. So that's different. It's a long process. It's a really long process. So this particular person passed away 3 days ago, and then she was taken from the hospital that she was in to her home, and then she was laid out in her home so that people could visit her there and say goodbye. And then she was taken to the funeral home, and so we've just come from the funeral home, and she's been laid out there for a couple of days in an open casket. And here's something that, if you come from a culture where you don't have open caskets, it can be pretty intense at first if you haven't experienced open caskets before, and it's always pretty intense. I've been to, as I said, lots of funerals, so I'm used to the open casket thing. Well, I've experienced the open casket thing a lot, but you sort of never get used to it if you've come from a culture where you don't have it. For these guys, it's really normal. So at this funeral were lots of people, and there were kids. The youngest kids were like 2 or 3 years old, up to teenagers. And for them, it's normal. Whenever they go to a funeral, this is what it's like. And you know, when you first walk into the room, you walk over to the casket and, you know, greet the person in the casket, and then you go sit down, and then the Buddhist priest and his assistant come and do a big long ceremony, and it's very ritualized, and it's very formal, and every step is very regimented. So what the staff do and the priest does, and also what we do, it's very regimented as to where everybody sits and what everybody does, and there's sort of participation required. So you know, at one stage you get up and there's this sort of it's a powder. It's sort of like incense powder, I guess, and you put it on a hot stone and it smokes, and you do your pray things, hands, and it doesn't really matter what religion you are or what your religious beliefs are, or if you have any religious beliefs or if you don't. It's best to think about this as a cultural thing. You know, you can think about it as a religious thing if you want to, and if for you it's a religious experience, then that's fine. But if you're not a religious person, then it's probably just best to think about it as a cultural thing and as a respectful thing. And it's really interesting, you know, because in Japanese society, everything's very regimented and formal, and these funerals are just the same. Every step's very organized and very sort of formal and very, very dignified, very, very planned and very, you know, and there's no, and because Japanese people's behavior, usually, you know, you don't see hugging and that sort of thing in public, you know, usually they don't do it. And at the funerals, usually they don't do it either, with the exception of perhaps possibly kids. Kids will do it a bit, but other people, they don't do it. But what's really interesting, and this is the humanity thing. This is where, you know, there's so many things in Japanese culture, and Japanese people and their behavior is really different from just about any culture you can experience, you know. But it's very interesting at a funeral. It doesn't matter how organized and ritualized and formal and regimented it is, the humanity comes through, you know, and people are crying. There was a guy at this funeral that's actually a policeman, and he's a big, solid guy. He's bigger than me, and he's a big, serious copper, you know, and he was really close to this lady, and you know, he was crying, and there was lots of people there crying. They don't sort of hug each other and stuff when they're crying. They're crying. they sort of try and keep it as under control as possible. But the humanity, you know, the humanity comes through. And some steps in this process, like, it's really, really formal, but there's some steps in this process that are really touching. Like at the end of the actual ceremony thing, when it comes time, just before it comes time for the casket to be taken out to the car and taken to a crematorium, because in Japan, cremations are the go now. We don't do burials here anymore, it's all cremations. And so just before the casket gets taken out to the car, the casket actually has, it's a lid on it with sort of a window where the face is, and little doors that are open where the face is. But just before they take it outside, they actually take the whole lid off the casket, so the whole body's there, with the body covered with sort of a sheet, except for the face, which you can see, you know, and then what they do is they have a mountain of flowers, and everybody walks up and puts flowers in the casket. So they actually put her handbag in first, and then they put a big bouquet of flowers, and then individual flowers. Everybody walks up and picks up an individual flower and puts it in there. And what ends up happening is the whole body ends up covered, and then all around the face, so that all that's left is just the face, and just surrounded by flowers, fresh flowers, which is really lovely. I've seen this a number of times before, and it's quite touching, and everybody gathering around doing it is very touching as well, you know. And so it's interesting that although it's a very regimented and controlled and organized process, some parts of it like this are extremely touching, and there were very few people there that didn't have tears in their eyes during this last part, because, you know, it's really, really touching. And then you've got, you know, all this person's relatives, and you've got the older people there, and the younger people there, the kids there as well, and everybody's standing around doing this thing with the flowers, you know. So extremely, extremely touching thing. So it's an amazing experience. It's I mean, obviously, a funeral anywhere in the world is always going to be an amazing experience, and a sort of a thought-provoking, and, you know, it doesn't matter what your beliefs are about these things. When you're faced with, you know, the end of somebody's life, it's a moving moment, isn't it? No matter what your beliefs are. Intense experience. So yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. If you find yourself, I mean, I'll put this on the How to Do Stuff playlist, because things like this, if you've heard a little bit about them before you experience them, so if you find yourself in Japan and there's a funeral that you have to go to, the clothing thing is very formal. It's everybody All the guys wear black suit, black tie, white shirt, everybody, and all the ladies, there's sort of a suit, skirt, jacket type suit that most ladies have specifically for funerals. That's all they wear it for, is for funerals. The other thing we have is juzu, is the Buddhist beads, you know, the prayer beads. So it's all very formal and regimented. If you find yourself going to a Japanese funeral, you know, don't be too nervous about it. Everybody there is nervous, you know. It doesn't matter how many times you've been through this, everybody there is nervous, and people will help you. You know, they'll tell you what to do and where to go and everything else. So don't stress about it. If you find yourself, you know, being asked to go to a Japanese funeral, don't stress about it. Just go along with what everybody else is doing. You can usually just copy what everybody else is doing, and they'll tell you where to sit and where to go and what to do and everything else. So, an amazing experience every time, you know. I mean, you know, you're losing someone that you care about, which is always amazing, but just the way it's done in Japan is really different. You know, there's a lot of differences. The formality, it's interesting because the formality of it, it's really formal compared to what you'd be used to in another country, perhaps. You know, very formal, very regimented, but still that humanity comes through. You know, it's very touching. It's the most emotional you will ever see Japanese people, because usually Japanese people contain their emotions and hide their emotions from other people, and it's the most emotional that you'll ever see Japanese people. You know, I've been to a lot of weddings as well, and you don't get a lot of emotion at the weddings here. You'll get a few tears now and again, but they contain it pretty well, and you don't see a lot of emotion at a Japanese wedding. So other than the funerals, you very rarely see much emotion at all. But at the funerals, out it comes, you know, and they sort of very dignified about it, and they sort of contain it, and there's no hugging going on or anything like that, except with the kids. I actually sent one of my kids to go and give one of the other grown-ups a hug who looked like they needed it, you know, but yeah, there's no hugging that goes on. Everybody just sort of bears it, you know, and stays very polite and very formal, but at the same time, you know, there wasn't a dry eye in the place. It was very emotional. So anyway, I'm dying in this car. This car, the aircon's not working, and it's like 38 degrees, and I'm just dying. So anyway, just an amazing experience. Just amazing experience. Those of you who have experienced a funeral in Japan will understand what I'm talking about. Those of you who haven't, hopefully this is sort of some sort of insight for you into what it's like. It's an amazing thing. It really is an amazing thing. Very stirring indeed. Very unique. It's different from what it'd be like in another country, you know. So anyway, guys, that's enough of that. More videos coming soon.